Hello and welcome to Office Hours. My name is Lou and I'm a senior PM here at Apptentive. Today I'm super excited to be here with Mel Fox, one of my fellow Apptentive PMs, to be chatting through some Q&A with you guys. Just before we get started, we're going to go ahead and do some quick introductions in case you haven't met us before. As I mentioned, my name is Lou. I am a senior PM here at Apptentive, and I have been here since January, but previously I was actually a customer for around 5 years. So big Apptentive fangirl. It was a huge help to me when I was a customer, and I love that I get to improve it every day. I have a dog named Burrito, who you might hear snoring in the background a little bit, so I do apologize. I'm not falling asleep. My dog is. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mel.
Hello, my name is Mel Fox. I am a product manager here at Apptentive as well. Was a previous customer too, so Lou and I have a lot of love for this product. On the side, I run a small business in the craft beer world. I also am an aerialist, which explains a lot of the unicorn hair. And I do also have a food named dog. His name is Pancake, and he also may bark in the background. So we like to give that disclaimer of our dogs. That's it. That's all I got for you guys.
Awesome. Okay, so before we get started, we're going to do a couple of general housekeeping notes here. If you were able to make the last office hours, this might be pretty familiar to you, so welcome back. And if you did make the last office hours, let us know in the poll here. But just to kick things off, if you've attended one of our past webinars, this is a little bit of a different format. The goal of office hours is to be useful for you. This isn't going to be a long presentation or a monologue from Mel and I, but more of an open QA time. So we'll leave it open with some tips and tricks, and then we'll start off with some discussion and save plenty of time for Q&A. Please excuse any technical hiccups we might run into. My Google Home in the background has been yelling at me all week long, so I apologize. We also want your feedback at the end of this session to learn what was or wasn't helpful for you so that we can continuously improve these sessions as well. You can submit questions in Q&A section in Zoom, or if you're joining us live on LinkedIn, go ahead and submit them in the chat area. We encourage people to ask questions or discuss in the chat section here too, so be sure to select your message to go to attendees and panelists, and not just the panelists. We do have the full hour blocked for y'all, so feel free to hop in and out whenever you need. And then finally, we'll be sharing the link to the recording and the slides out later this week via email. So if you're a customer, you'll likely get that in product happy hour. So keep your eyes peeled for that tomorrow. We do want to reiterate that while we're here to answer almost any question for y'all, if you are a customer today and you need something troubleshooting, we'd recommend you reach out directly to your CSM. They're going to be able to answer your question much better than we would, since they're already familiar with their applications and your strategy. Okay, let's get into it. So just a refresher on what's happening, we're going to start with a quick overview of a topic. This week, we're talking about product manager fears, which we've been talking a lot internally around. So we're pretty excited to share with y'all. And then we'll open up the time for Q&A for any strategic questions related to this designated topic or anything else that might be top of mind around your feedback strategy or getting great engagement with your customers. This is not a time for customer troubleshooting, just to reiterate. So reach out to your CSM if you are an existing customer. And then before we jump in here, we want to share a little bit about Apptentive. I know we have quite a few customers in here today. Throw your hands up in the chat if you're a current customer, but there are some of you who haven't heard of Apptentive before. So just to level set, we work with some of the world's largest brands. And as you can see here, just a handful of the ones we work with. All of those brands trust us because at our core, Apptentive is a feedback company all about customer love, which is something we embody in almost everything we do. Our voice of the customer solution helps these brands collect and measure customer feedback to improve their customers' experiments and ultimately improve their brand relationships and loyalty. Apptentive helps capture actionable emotions and feedback from the 99% of consumer voices that are typically missed, and most importantly, quickly turn them into quick, actionable feedback. And with that, I will throw it over to Mel to talk through our PM fears.
All right, super excited to talk about this topic. As we know, Halloween might be over, but our fears constantly persist. So we are going to dive right in and really talk about what our team has deemed as the fear cycle. So We have highlighted here 7 major product manager fears that I think we can all relate to. But before we zoom in on each fear, I did want to hit on some spooky statistics we may have, because it's really spooky season all year round, in my opinion. So let's look at some stats. 1% of consumers give feedback unless asked directly. This is a statistic we use at Apptentive a lot to just demonstrate how powerful it is to actually ask your customers for their feedback. But traditionally, you'll only hear from 1% of your consumers, which is kind of crazy. 51% of consumers expect companies to ask them for feedback directly. So it's not, hey, I'm like readily giving you my feedback. I want to be asked for my feedback. 69% of product managers reported spending 0 hours a month interviewing potential customers, which is just kind of sad. We also had another 69% of PMs reporting spending 0 hours on win-loss analysis with evaluators as well. So I think we all know product managers wear a lot of hats, and it's really, really difficult to spend our time in every single thing. But again, it's an interesting statistic there. We also noted that 25 out of 26 customers will take their business elsewhere without voicing their complaints. So that means if I was a customer of a business and I didn't like what they were doing and I left, 25 out of those 26 people who just leave never said anything about it, which is kind of crazy. 55% of consumers who leave feedback in a mobile app said they are not likely to remain a customer if they're ignored, which again, that makes sense. 67% of consumers who leave feedback in a mobile app don't hear back from the company ever. So they may have been asked for their feedback and then they just never hear from the company about it. And then 56% of PMs report they have too many responsibilities. Didn't mention that with the, hey, PMs are expected to interview potential customers, do win-loss analysis, do all the fun stuff where you're wearing all the hats. I'm actually surprised that percentage isn't higher. It's kind of spooky to me that it's 56%, honestly. But some interesting statistics just to get us started. I'm not sure if anyone on the call has anything interesting to contribute, or if any of these were particularly surprising to you. But feel free as we're going along to just throw some thoughts in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that for you. But moving into the first fear, which is building the wrong thing. So I feel like all PMs are kind of scared to death that they're going to build something that either nobody uses or nobody likes, which is probably a core fear of a lot of us. So more stats for you guys. It's going to be a fun little stat heavy intro here. 22% of PMs say they have too many ideas and prioritizing the roadmap is difficult. Again, kind of feel like that number should be higher, but it is what it is. And then 16% of PMs say they don't have the data they need to make educated product decisions. So being able to have those data points that allow us to make informed roadmap decisions is super important. And to combat building the wrong things, we have a couple of suggestions here at Apptentive. Intentionally prioritize your features. I think we all prioritize a little bit differently, but as long as there's a method to our madness, I think that that's really important. Create a living document. Just because you prioritized something 6 months ago doesn't mean it's your priority now. Avoid too much detail. This allows you to be a little bit more creative and also avoid overcommitting to things when you really want to release an MVP to get that feedback and iterate quickly. Correct any unrealistic expectations you may have along the way. Make sure you're delivering the right value. Check in with your customers regularly to make sure that you're delivering exactly what they're expecting. Make sure that you're aligning diverse teams around the product vision. So having those cross-functional meetings where really everyone can give their input to make sure that you're building the best possible product. And then make sure you're translating whatever your vision is into action. So always starting with what that core vision is, how do things align underneath there? On to fear number 2, losing customer trust. So this is a really interesting one, and we have some quotes from Gartner that are really impactful here. Brands that take proactive steps to address customer concerns demonstrate customer centricity, which earns customer trust and builds relationships. I don't think any of that is surprising to us. On the other side here, we have a note that says 83% of consumers refuse to do business with brands they don't trust. So gaining trust is really, really difficult, I think, inherently for brands, especially because you're a company. And if you're not an individual human, it becomes a little bit more difficult to get that trust out of the gate. But really what's the difficult thing here, the core fear, is losing that customer trust. If you build it up and then you do something that really feels like hurtful to your customer, like they won't trust you again. What's the difficult thing? What was that? Sorry. Anyway, one of the items here too, we say, don't stay silent, right? Always talk to your customers, make sure that it is a two-way conversation. You're not just talking at them, but you're listening, responding, and continuing the conversation, making sure that they know that their voice is heard. And then make sure to follow up on complaints and concerns. We'll always talk about closing the feedback loop, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But again, like keeping and building that trust consistently is super, super important. Fear number 3, if you guys are an app product manager, I assume this is something that is always top of mind for you: bad app ratings and reviews. We have some interesting things around bad app ratings and reviews. For our side of things, we always view all feedback as useful, right? If someone is writing a 1-star or 2-star review, it's probably because they had a bad experience, and that's okay. We want to address that though. We want to avoid getting defensive when we're responding. We want to acknowledge that feedback, even when it's painful. We want to apologize, even if we don't agree, even if you're not wrong. Make sure that you're acknowledging. This is, I feel like, just basic like therapy. Like, acknowledge the person's feelings. Like, even if you didn't intend to do something, if it came off that way, like, you know, apologize and acknowledge it. One thing that we suggest too is, instead of having long monologues in, you know, the app store, take that conversation private or offline if you can, to have more of a meaningful resolution to the problem. Always make it right. Always make sure you're learning from it. And then my favorite, which I added at the very bottom for a reason, don't feed the trolls. I worked for a B2C mobile application in the beer space, and it was very interesting because I was getting a lot of people reviewing the app when they were intoxicated, and some of them were trolls. And as a product manager, siphoning through the feedback and understanding when it's okay and appropriate to respond and when it's not does become important. That's like a very specific circumstance, but I think it applies to most people who are looking at app store reviews. Just make sure you're not feeding the trolls. It's like general life advice as well. I'm just going to go into like, this is a therapy session now for product managers. It's fine. Okay. Next up here, fear number 4, outside of bad app ratings, is losing customers altogether. So when we look at this, launching a VOC initiative, which this is where Apptentive can help, can really help combat losing those customers, right? Understanding why they're upset or why they could potentially be looking to leave is really important. Make sure that as you're communicating with people, you're using contextually relevant messaging or being proactive about that customer engagement strategy. Be human. I say this a lot. Just be a human. Talk to people. Make sure that you're understanding where they're at, and make sure that you're not just giving a canned response to everyone who provides feedback to you. Number 3 here is closing the feedback loop. Making sure, again, that we've heard them, even if you haven't fixed the problem, even if you haven't provided the solution that they were expecting, at least you're saying, hey, we're working on this, or hey, we heard you, and closing that feedback loop until you can really make that something for your customer to be happy about. And then finally is giving customers a reason to re-engage with you and return to your app. I do think that there are a couple of apps out there that are extremely transactional and not necessarily relationship based, but being able to say like, hey, like, we want you to return to this. We want you to have another good experience. I think that that's really important to make sure that we're saying like, hey, like, come back, whenever you need us, we're here, even if it's not like an app that you're entering every single day. All right. On to the next fear. 'Tis the season for budget setting. So losing budget, I think, is always on our mind as everyone is trying to defend the spend. So one thing that we have highlighted here on the right-hand side, a fun stat, 29% of product managers report not having enough budget. Bless those 29% who have enough budget. Like, what a nice life you must lead. But for every other product manager that is not in that 29%, feels like we're constantly fighting for our life to defend our spend here. So proving your product's return on investment is extremely important. How is this benefiting the company in the long run? It might not just be revenue, right? Building relationships, building trust, building brand awareness, like that all equals important things to your organization. So making sure you're proving your ROI in a meaningful way is extremely important. Building a strong business case for scaling the scope, the team, the budget, and product positioning, making sure that you're consistently refining that business case and understanding where it's really smart to be investing in based on your strategy. Doing more with less right now to prove your resourcefulness. I think that's pretty much the name of the game for product management is like, hey, we've got our hands in a lot of things right now. Here's what we're doing with what we've been given. But guess what? Here's what we can do if we have an additional tool to support us. Or in that aspect, like how much more efficient or productive can we be if we're not manually working through something when a piece of software can help us instead? And then finally, invest now in tools that will give you that high ROI quickly. Again, that's the, hey, let's prove out. And a lot of these things, I always recommend doing pilots on like, hey, we're going to pilot this product for 3 months. And just show what type of ROI we get by using this type of tool. A lot of software has, 30-day, 90-day trials, and it's super important to be able to do that and use that to prove out your case. Like, hey, if we don't have this, here's what we're going to lose. If we do have this, here's what we're going to gain. And number 6, a fear of being slowed down. Product management is a marathon. However, we work in sprints. So it's a lot of running fast and then hoping that we can catch our breath and then continuing to run fast again. And so a fear of being slowed down, I think, is as we're generally, product management is generally pressured by leadership to meet deadlines. I think there's a lot of really interesting things here. So 47% of product managers say they don't have enough time in their day. Correct. There is never enough time. 33% of PMs say their team is too small. 20% of PMs say there are too many decision makers, which slows down the progress. So not having a clear decision maker or having multiple decision makers debating amongst a decision instead of just being able to use data to create the decision and move fast. And then 16% of PMs say they don't have the authority to make decisions, which just makes me sad more than anything. That's our fear of being slowed down. We also do have some things to combat this as well. Constantly questioning the priority level of the work that you have to complete. Is this my top priority right now? I know we all go through those fire drills where it's like, hey, we need a response on this right this very second. Sometimes you don't have to give a response right that very second, right? Priority level of work too also comes with what features and functionality you're going to be working on, right? Is this really the top priority, or are there things we can shuffle around to maybe get something that is a little bit lower of a priority, but a quicker win for us and shows that we're supporting our customers? Being transparent with your manager if you feel like you have too many responsibilities to manage. Blessed, because I feel like our manager here is always like, hey, how's your workload? And we're always like, hey, it's a lot, but we're doing great. We can handle it. We'll tell you when we can't. But making sure you have those open communication lines, super, super important just for a healthy work environment. Figuring out which productivity method works for you. Lou and I work very differently in the way we like work manage, but it complements each other really well, which I appreciate. But we know also that this isn't one size fits all, right? So figuring out what works for you and figuring out how you can communicate that to your team is really important as well. Working directly with your teammates to figure out where your biggest resource constraints lie before asking for additional headcount. Headcount is a game that is very, very difficult to play if you're resource constrained, which almost every tech company at this point is, right? So being able to say like, hey, what's our biggest gap? Like, where are we really struggling? How can we help? And sometimes that's a contractor, sometimes that's not full-time hire, and that's totally okay. And then let the data do the talking instead of allowing decisions to be made by emotion. I think this helps a lot in those cross-functional conversations we were mentioning. Like when you have too many stakeholders in the game, data is your best friend and data will help you make quick decisions. So there's also a little disclaimer down here that says, here's the thing, no matter the size of your team, you'll likely always feel as though you need another teammate or 5 to reach your goals. When you feel this way, it's a good sign because you're setting stretch goals, which many teams should strive for. So I do feel like we all have felt the weight of just doing too many things or feeling like, oh my gosh, we're overwhelmed because we have so much to do. Honestly, good problems because you're not bored. And if you're like me and you're bored, you're not going to have fun at your job. So, you know, we do what we can. Okay. We have hit our end of the, what I will call the webinar section of office hours. We have a couple of people in the office hours today. So I did want to see if anyone had any items they want to hit on any further, if we want to talk about any fears we maybe did not highlight, we did not look at. How's everyone feeling out there? Lou, any one fear resonate with you the most?
Oh, I was going to ask you the same thing, actually. I feel like they're all so cyclical and they just feed each other. So you start with the first one and they all kind of wrap in. But I would definitely say building the wrong thing and then being slowed down. Because I think if you start down the wrong path, you very quickly spiral out to slowing down what you actually need to accomplish. And I think one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is just kind of refining our focus. So we have a really clear set of next steps for everything that we're building, and that we can hyper focus on the things that are really important and align most strategically with the vision, so that we're building the right things and we can always back that up with data and align it back to the vision. So we're headed in the right direction towards that North Star. What about you? Which one is most resonating these days?
I think just because, I mean, I feel like ever since I became a PM, my whole thing was like customer obsessed mentality, like make sure that we are customer first, customer centric, everything we're doing is for the customer. And I have like I do have a really strong fear around losing customer trust because it's so hard to get back. Like once it's lost, it's a really, really difficult thing to be able to recover. I do think being able to be transparent and being proactive with how you address that is really, really important. But that's the one that I'm always like, I don't want our customers to feel bad.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to lose them. So that's probably my top one. But you're totally right. I mean, they all kind of overlap in one way or another.
They do. How have you thought that in the past of like making sure that you're not losing those customer relationships? How have you stayed ahead of that?
So I think a lot, honestly, I used Apptentive for a lot of this stuff. I would use notes, like if we had an unexpected outage or something, and the mobile app that I ran, we had 500,000 monthly active users using it to control their HVAC. So if something got wonky, like they were telling us. And so using notes to be like, hey, we understand that there's an issue with scheduling right now. We're going to get it back up and running as soon as we can. And just being proactive about it. We also supplemented that with sending direct emails out to our customers. So we had templates for all that kind of stuff. And I also am the product manager that would be in the Google Play Store and the App Store every single day. And like the way I did this would be like file on 1, 2, and 3 stars, see who I need to be supporting right now from that front and like make sure that they're getting the support that they need. And then at the end of the day, so I do that in the morning, which I don't know if this is the right way to do that. Sometimes it set an interesting tone for the day. Sometimes it was fine. And then at the end of the day, I would respond to all my 4- and 5-star reviews with like my canned little like, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. And that made me end the day well. So I think just having that like consistent touch base and being like, I hear you, I'm listening, like we're here to help and support, and here's what we've got going on, or here's a potential fix to your solution. Those were probably the two like most prominent things I did to be like, hey, I'm trying to stay proactive in this reference.
Yeah, and I think what you also just said around ending your day with the positive, I think it's really easy, especially as a product manager, to only see the negative feedback. And that can be super draining and just feed the cycle of all of the other fears.
Yep.
So taking those opportunities to like have the good feedback and chat with customer success and actually chat with customers too, because I think even when you're on a support call, they dabble in a couple of like little gems there that just give you so much energy. Making sure that you're able to have those positive sentiment moments are really important just to keep yourself.
Yeah. I always have like a little folder that's like feel good moments. And it's like all the nice little reviews that we have that we can be like, look, someone said this was the best app they've ever used. Like, remember that, developers, like we're doing okay.
Yeah. And putting that in like sprint review decks and like sharing that with the team too, I think is really important, especially keeping the energy from like getting slowed down. Cause I think it's easy, especially for engineers, to get in a rut and like working on the same thing for a while. And so when you're able to like follow up and reinforce with how great like everything is for the customers and what value you're actually able to deliver and feed it with those quotes and that real customer testimonial, I think that's super helpful too.
Yeah.
Love putting that gem in a sprint review deck.
Yeah. A morale booster, if you will. Yeah. What else? Anything else on fears that we want to dig into? Anyone else in the chat have anything interesting on your minds?
No, just as a reminder though, we did just publish an ebook on all of these fears as well. So if you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend. It was a pretty spooky read. I have Taylor Swift stuck in my head as well. Definitely. Constantly. It's absolutely never ending.
Also, the ebook is a really good read.
Yes.
Our marketing team does a stellar job translating how Lou and I talk about product management and put it into words that make actual sense for people. And also the statistics I do think are really fascinating that they pulled. So there are really good like little nuggets in there. If you need any support for any of your strategy for 2023, you can kind of pull some of those stats. And I think that that's super helpful.
Yeah, great ways to arm yourself with data for having the good budget fight.
For sure. Sweet. Well, I'm not going to let spooky season ever end, but if we don't have any other questions or thoughts from the group today, I mean, this is your time. So if not, we'll see you for next week's, not next week's, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, we got some more office hours coming up. We're going to talk about more things.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it. Got some holidays in there though.
Yes. Oh yeah, 'tis the season. There they are.
Awesome. Okay, so next up, November 30th, iOS versus Android best practices for App Store success. So following up Thanksgiving with some Android and iOS best practices. And then in December, we'll be doing seasonality findings, which is super interesting data that we find ourselves talking about probably once a week. And then to end out the year, we'll probably skip that one, but it's to be determined. We'll see how everyone's feeling and we'll see if something gets added to the calendar. Yeah, thanks for everyone who joined today. Always love getting to chat with customers, gives me lots of good energy. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you guys have any feedback for the sessions or if you have any topic requests too, shoot us an email. You should have our emails hopefully somewhere in your inbox. But it's super helpful just to know what our customers are interested in. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, y'all.